My wife said, "If you can't handle me spending weekends with my ex-husband, maybe we're not right for each other." I replied, "You're spot on." Then I accepted the job transfer to Singapore I'd been turning down for her. When she texted, "What's your weekend like?" I sent a selfie from Changi Airport. My name is Daniel Cross. I'm 32 years old, and I used to think marriage was about partnership. You know, the whole two people rowing the same boat situation they sell you in those cheesy wedding vows. Turns out marriage is actually about patience. Specifically, how long you can keep your cool while your wife flirts with her ex-husband under the flimsy excuse of emotional closure. Yeah, you heard that right. Emotional closure. That's the phrase that's been haunting my existence for the past 3 months, like a bad Spotify ad you can't skip. My wife Chloe is 30 years old. And don't get me wrong, when I married her 3 years ago, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. She was charming in that effortless way that makes everyone at parties gravitate toward her like she's got some kind of social magnet implanted in her chest. Witty, too. The kind of person who could roast you so smoothly you'd actually laugh while getting burned. But here's the thing nobody mentions in the marriage handbook. Charm and wit don't mean squat when your spouse is allergic to the concept of boundaries, like some people are allergic to gluten. When her ex-husband Mark moved back to town about 4 months ago, I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, exes exist, right? They're part of your history, like that embarrassing haircut from high school or that time you thought cargo shorts were a good idea. Chloe came to me all serious one evening, coffee mug in hand, looking like she was about to announce something profound, and said, "Babe, Mark reached out. He's going through a rough time with the divorce finalization and everything. I think we should meet up, for closure." Closure? There's that word again. I remember nodding like an understanding modern husband who's totally secure and not at all bothered by his wife meeting up with the guy she was married to before me. "Sure," I said, "closure is important." God, I was such an idiot. Closure, as I would discover over the following weeks, is apparently a very time-intensive process. It required multiple coffee dates at that pretentious cafe downtown where a latte costs more than my gym membership. Then it evolved into weekend brunches because nothing says "I'm over you" like sharing avocado toast and mimosas every Saturday morning. And then, oh boy, then came the overnight art therapy sessions. Yeah, art therapy. Chloe told me with a straight face that Mark was working through his emotional trauma by painting, and she needed to be there to support his creative healing journey. I'm not making this up. She actually used the phrase creative healing journey like it was a legitimate thing and not something she pulled out of a self-help book she found in the bargain bin. I tried talking to my friend Liam about it because, honestly, I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. We were grabbing beers after work one Thursday, and I laid it all out for him. "Man, maybe I'm just overreacting," I said, swirling my beer around like it held the answers to my marital problems. Like, maybe I'm being one of those possessive, insecure husbands who can't handle his wife having male friends. Liam, who's been married for 8 years and has seen some stuff, looked at me like I just suggested the earth was flat. "Bro," he said, and when Liam starts with bro, you know some truth is about to drop. Closure doesn't take 6 consecutive weekends and a bottle of wine. That's not closure. That's dating. You're basically her side piece at this point. That hit different, let me tell you. I sat there holding my beer, processing the fact that my own friend just essentially told me I'd been demoted in my own marriage. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Liam had a point. A very valid, extremely uncomfortable point. Every single weekend for the past month and a half had revolved around Mark's emotional needs. Chloe would get dressed up, and I mean dressed up, like full makeup, hair curled, wearing outfits I hadn't seen since our honeymoon, to go support her ex-husband through his tough time. Meanwhile, I was sitting at home eating leftover pizza and watching Netflix alone like some divorced dad whose kids are at their mom's for the weekend. The kicker? Whenever I tried to bring it up, Chloe had this incredible ability to flip the script and make me feel like I was the problem. "Daniel, why are you being so insecure?" she'd say, tilting her head in that condescending way that made me want to throw something. "Mark is going through a really hard time, and I'm just being a good friend. You know I'm with you. Why can't you trust me?" And there it was, the trust card. She'd play it every single time. And like a chump, I'd back down because I didn't want to be that guy. You know, the controlling, jealous husband who can't handle his wife having a life outside their marriage. But here's what really started eating at me, the double standard of it all. During this whole Mark situation, my company had been dangling this incredible opportunity in front of me. We're talking dream job territory here. Lead operations manager for our Singapore office, a $145,000 base salary, housing allowance, relocation package, and an apartment with a skyline view that would make your Instagram followers weep with envy. It was the kind of offer that comes once in a career, the kind that changes your entire life trajectory, and I've already turned it down twice. Why? Because every time I brought it up with Chloe, she'd shoot it down faster than you can say emotional closure. "I can't move to Singapore, Daniel," she'd say, looking at me like I just suggested we relocate to Mars. "My entire family is here. My mom, my brother, my friends, my career. You can't expect me to just abandon everything I've built." And like the supportive husband I was trying to be, I'd nod and say, "You're right, babe. We'll figure something else out." Meanwhile, she was spending every weekend with Mark, prioritizing his emotional well-being over our marriage. But somehow, my career opportunity was the unreasonable ask. The moment everything crystallized for me happened on a random Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work, standing in our bedroom, tying my tie, when Chloe came out of the bathroom wearing this gorgeous sundress, makeup already done, hair perfectly styled. It was 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Going somewhere?" I asked, already knowing the answer but hoping I was wrong. "Oh, Mark's going through a rough morning," she said, casually, while putting on earrings. "I'm just going to grab brunch with him, help him process some feelings." I stood there, tie half done, watching my wife get dolled up for another man, and something inside me just snapped. "Do you really need to see him every weekend?" I asked, and I could hear the exhaustion in my own voice. "And now weekdays too?" She turned to me with this smile that I can only describe as the exact expression a politician makes when facing the press after a scandal. Sweet, practiced, and completely hollow. "He's my ex-husband, Daniel. I'm helping him heal. It's called compassion. Maybe you should try it sometime." The casual cruelty of that comment just hung in the air between us. I watched her grab her purse, check her lipstick one more time in the mirror, and head for the door. Right before she left, she turned back and said, "If you can't handle me spending time with my ex-husband, then maybe we're not right for each other." She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was commenting on the weather or suggesting we switch laundry detergents. Then she walked out, leaving me standing there in our bedroom with my half-tied tie and the sudden crystal-clear realization that she was absolutely right. We weren't right for each other. Not anymore. Maybe we never were. And you know what? I was completely okay with that. Every single weekend turned into what I started calling the Mark Festival in my head. And honestly, if they sold tickets, Chloe would have been VIP pass holder number 1. Saturday brunches became as regular as my morning coffee, except way more annoying and significantly more expensive since she kept using our joint credit card to pay for their emotional support meals. Sunday turned into movie therapy days, because apparently watching films together is crucial for processing divorce trauma or whatever pseudo-psychological garbage she was selling me. And then, just when I thought the schedule couldn't get more ridiculous, Friday evening casual check-ins got added to the roster, like some kind of bonus content nobody asked for. I tried to be reasonable about it at first, I really did. One Saturday morning, while she was doing her makeup for the 3rd weekend in a row, I walked into the bathroom and asked as calmly as I could manage, "Do you really need to see him every single weekend?" I wasn't even being accusatory. I was genuinely asking, like maybe there was some logical explanation I was missing, some piece of the puzzle that would make this whole situation make sense. She turned to me with her mascara wand still in hand and smiled like a politician at a press conference who just got asked about their offshore bank accounts. You know that smile. The one that's technically a smile, but has absolutely zero warmth behind it. The kind that makes you feel like you're being managed rather than talked to. "He's my ex-husband, Daniel," she said, turning back to the mirror to continue her makeup routine like this was the most obvious thing in the world. "I'm helping him heal. It's what good people do. We don't just abandon people when they're struggling." The implication hung in the air like a bad smell, that if I had a problem with this, I wasn't a good person. It was masterful manipulation. Really, I almost wanted to applaud the technique, except I was too busy feeling like an absolute chump, standing there in my own bathroom, being made to feel guilty for having the audacity to want my wife to, spend time with me occasionally. "Right," I said, and I could hear the sarcasm dripping from my voice, even though I was trying to keep it neutral. "So you're basically a full-time emotional nurse now? Should I start calling you Florence Nightingale, or is that too on the nose?" She didn't even respond to that one, just gave me this look like I was being childish and unreasonable, which somehow made everything worse. I left the bathroom before I said something I'd regret, which was becoming a pattern in our conversations lately. Meanwhile, while my marriage was slowly circling the drain like hair in a shower, my career was actually trying to throw me a lifeline. My boss, Robert, had pulled me into his office for the third time in 2 months to discuss the Singapore position. "Daniel, I'm going to be straight with you," he said, leaning back in his chair with that serious expression that meant he was about to say something important. "This opportunity isn't going to wait forever. We need someone in Singapore, and you're our first choice. But if you keep declining, we're going to have to move on to other candidates." The offer was still sitting there, gleaming like a golden ticket. $145,000 base salary, full housing allowance that would cover a luxury apartment in one of the most expensive cities in the world, relocation package, signing bonus, and a view that would make your eyes water. It was so beautiful. I'd already turned it down twice at this point, and both times it was because Chloe had shut down the conversation before it could even really start. "I can't move, Daniel," she'd said the first time I brought it up, barely looking up from her phone where she was probably texting Mark about their next brunch date. "My family's here. My whole life is here. You can't seriously expect me to just pack up and leave everything behind." The irony of her saying this while actively choosing to spend all her free time with another man wasn't lost on me. But I'd let it go because I was still trying to be the understanding husband. The second time I brought up Singapore, I'd actually prepared a whole presentation. I'm talking spreadsheets, cost of living comparisons, photos of potential apartments, research on expat communities, the whole 9 yards. I thought if I could show her how amazing this opportunity was, how it could change our lives, she'd at least consider it. But she barely glanced at my carefully prepared documents before saying, "Daniel, I already told you. My career is here, my family is here. This isn't up for discussion." Then she'd gone back to getting ready for her Sunday movie therapy session with Mark, and I'd closed my laptop, feeling like the world's biggest idiot for even trying. But that Tuesday morning, after she'd basically told me that if I couldn't handle her weekend boyfriend situation, then maybe we weren't right for each other, something shifted in my brain. It was like all the puzzle pieces suddenly clicked into place, and I could see the whole picture clearly for the first time in months. She could prioritize Mark's emotional needs over our marriage, spend every weekend playing therapist to her ex-husband, use our money to fund their little reunion tour, but my career opportunity, the one that could actually improve our lives and financial situation, was completely off the table because it would inconvenience her? The double standard was so massive you could see it from space. So that evening, after Chloe came home from her Tuesday brunch special smelling like Mark's cologne and talking about how emotionally vulnerable he'd been today, I made a decision. She went to take a shower, probably to wash off the guilt or whatever, and I sat down at our dining room table, opened my laptop, and pulled up my email. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for maybe 10 seconds before I started typing. The email to Robert was short and to the point. Robert, I'll take the Singapore offer. If the 2-week notice period works for you, I can start the transition immediately. Let me know the next steps. Thanks, Daniel. I read it over once, twice, then hit send before I could second-guess myself. The whoosh sound of the email sending felt like the starting gun at a race, and suddenly my heart was pounding in my chest. I just accepted a job on the other side of the world without discussing it with my wife, which technically made me a terrible husband. But then again, she'd been having what was essentially an emotional affair with her ex-husband for 3 months without really considering my feelings. So I figured we were about even in the terrible spouse department. When Chloe came out of the bathroom 20 minutes later, hair wrapped in a towel and wearing her bathrobe, she found me, still sitting at the dining room table with my laptop open. "What are you doing?" she asked, walking past me toward the kitchen. There was something so casual about the question, like she was asking what I wanted for dinner or if I'd remembered to take out the trash. No concern, no real interest, just baseline spousal obligation to acknowledge my existence. "Career therapy," I said, and I couldn't help the slight smile that crossed my face. "Just accepted a new job. You should probably think about crashing at your mom's place tonight. Or, hey, maybe Mark's got a spare room since you two are so spiritually connected and everything." I kept my tone light, conversational even, like I was suggesting we try a new restaurant instead of essentially announcing the end of our marriage. The change in her expression was instantaneous and honestly pretty satisfying. Her eyes went wide, her mouth literally dropped open like in a cartoon, and she just stood there frozen halfway between the bathroom and the kitchen. "What?" The word came out strangled, like she couldn't quite process what she was hearing. "What are you talking about?" "Singapore," I said simply, closing my laptop and leaning back in my chair. "I'm taking the Singapore position. 2 weeks notice, and then I'm out. And since you said this morning that if I can't handle your ex-husband's situation, then maybe we're not right for each other, I'm just agreeing with you. We're not right for each other. Problem solved." "Are you seriously ending our marriage over this?" she asked, and her voice had gone up about 3 octaves. The towel on her head was starting to slip, and she hadn't even noticed. "Over me, trying to help someone who's going through a hard time? Are you actually that selfish?" I stood up, grabbed my laptop, and looked at her dead in the eye. "You said it yourself, Chloe. We're not right for each other. I'm just the first one to actually do something about it. And for the record, this isn't about me being selfish. This is about me finally choosing myself after months of you choosing him." Her mascara, which she'd carefully applied that morning for her brunch date, hadn't even fully dried before she started yelling, "You'll regret this, Daniel! You're making a huge mistake!" She was following me toward our bedroom now, her voice getting louder with each step. I paused at the bedroom door and turned back to her. "You know what? I really don't think I will." And honestly, I meant it. That Tuesday morning email to Robert wasn't just a career decision. It was a declaration of independence, my own personal 4th of July. Except, instead of fireworks, I had a rapidly improving salary package and an exit strategy. While Chloe was busy in the bathroom applying her war paint for what I can only assume was another emotionally intense brunch session with Mark, I was sitting at the dining room table with my laptop open, feeling more alive than I had in months. It's funny how clarity hits you sometimes. One minute, you're drowning in confusion and self-doubt, wondering if you're the crazy one, and the next minute, everything just clicks into place, like a perfectly solved Rubik's Cube. I could hear Chloe in the bathroom, the familiar sounds of her makeup routine playing out like a symphony I'd heard 1,000 times before. The click of her mascara tube opening, the soft brush of her makeup brush against her face, the little satisfied hum she made when her eyeliner came out perfectly symmetrical. She was taking her time, really committing to the look, which told me everything I needed to know about how important this particular meeting with Mark was. When she finally emerged from the bathroom, she looked like she was heading to a wedding, not a casual coffee chat with someone who was supposedly just seeking closure. "What are you doing?" she asked, pausing by the dining room table where I was still sitting with my laptop. She had that slight edge to her voice, the one that suggested she was mildly annoyed that I was still home and not already at work, clearing the path for her guilt-free exit to Mark's emotional rescue mission. "Career therapy," I said, and I couldn't keep the smirk off my face. The phrase just came out smooth and sarcastic, and it felt perfect. "Just took a new job, actually. You should probably start thinking about crashing at your mom's place tonight. Or better yet, maybe Mark's got a spare room since you two are so spiritually connected and everything. I hear emotional closure works better when you're under the same roof." Her hand, which had been reaching for her purse on the counter, froze mid-air. It was like someone had hit pause on a remote control. Her perfectly made-up face went through about 17 different expressions in the span of 3 seconds: confusion, disbelief, anger, panic, and finally settling on something that looked like genuine shock. "What?" she managed to get out, her voice climbing an octave. "What are you talking about?" "I'm taking the Singapore job," I said, closing my laptop with a satisfying click. "The one I've turned down twice because you said you couldn't possibly leave your family. The $145,000 one with the apartment that has a view so nice it makes grown men cry. That job. I accepted it about 20 minutes ago while you were doing your makeup for Mark." The color drained from her face so fast, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. "Daniel, you can't be serious right now. You're making a major life decision because you're upset about you choosing your ex-husband over me for 3 straight months?" I interrupted, standing up from the table. "Yeah, actually, I am. See, this morning, you said something really profound. You said if I can't handle you spending weekends with your ex-husband, maybe we're not right for each other. And you know what? You're absolutely right. We're not right for each other. So I'm just agreeing with your very accurate assessment of our relationship." She set her purse down, and I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "Are you seriously ending our marriage over this?" Her voice cracked a little on the word marriage, and for a split second, I saw actual vulnerability flash across her face. "Over me trying to help someone who's going through a difficult time?" The audacity of that statement almost made me laugh. "Help someone, Chloe? You've been on a 3-month romantic reunion tour disguised as therapy sessions. You get dressed up like you're going on dates. You spend entire weekends with him. You use our money to fund your little emotional affair? And then you have the nerve to make me feel like I'm the crazy one for having a problem with it? So yeah, I'm ending our marriage. Or more accurately, you ended it weeks ago, and I'm just filing the paperwork. This is insane," she practically shouted, and now her carefully applied mascara was starting to run a little as tears formed in her eyes. "You're throwing away 3 years of marriage because you're jealous and insecure?" "I'm choosing myself," I corrected her, grabbing my coffee mug and walking toward the kitchen. "There's a difference. For 3 months, you've been choosing Mark. Every weekend, every brunch, every art therapy session, or whatever ridiculous excuse you came up with, you chose him. And when I brought up Singapore, you shut it down immediately because it would inconvenient you. So now I'm choosing me, and I'm choosing Singapore. And honestly, it feels pretty damn good." She followed me into the kitchen, her heels clicking urgently against our hardwood floors. "Daniel, we can talk about this. We can work through this. I'll stop seeing Mark if it bothers you that much. We can go to couples therapy. We can—" "Save it," I said, holding up my hand. "You had 3 months to care about how this affected me. 3 months to notice that your husband was becoming a stranger in his own marriage. 3 months to choose us over him, and you didn't. So now it's too late. I gave my boss my 2 weeks notice. I'm taking the job. And you can spend all the time you want with Mark now because I won't be here to be the third wheel in my own marriage. Her jaw dropped so far I thought it might actually unhinge. You already gave notice without even discussing it with me? The irony of her being upset about me making a decision without her input after she'd made countless decisions about Mark without my input was almost too perfect. Yup, I said cheerfully, rinsing out my coffee mug. Sent the email while you were curling your hair for your ex-husband. Seemed like the right time since you were busy with your morning Mark preparation ritual. You'll regret this, she yelled, and now the tears were flowing freely, taking her mascara with them. You're going to realize you made a huge mistake, and I won't be here when you come crawling back. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret, just a calm, peaceful certainty that I was doing the right thing. Chloe, the only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. Have fun at brunch. Tell Mark I said congratulations, he won. He can have you and all your emotional baggage. She opened her mouth to say something else, probably another threat or guilt trip, but I was already walking toward our bedroom. I'm packing some essentials and staying at a hotel tonight, I called over my shoulder. You can have the apartment until the lease is up. Consider it my parting gift. I could hear her sobbing in the kitchen, but I didn't turn around. I walked into our bedroom, pulled my suitcase out of the closet, and started throwing clothes into it with zero care for organization or wrinkle prevention. T-shirts, jeans, suits, shoes, everything went in like I was speed running a packing competition. My laptop bag, my toiletries, my phone charger, all the essentials for starting your new life when your old one spontaneously combusts. 20 minutes later, I was walking out of our apartment with my suitcase rolling behind me, and Chloe was still in the kitchen, mascara running down her face, phone in her hand, probably texting Mark about the dramatic turn of events. She looked up as I passed, her mouth opening like she wanted to say something, but I just kept walking. The door closing behind me was one of the most satisfying sounds I'd ever heard. As I loaded my suitcase into my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Robert. Fantastic news, Daniel. Welcome to the Singapore team. I'll have HR send over the relocation package details by end of day. This is going to be great. I sat in my car for a minute staring at that text message and allowed myself a genuine smile. For the first time in 3 months, I felt like I could actually breathe. No more weekend Mark festivals, no more emotional closure excuses, no more feeling like a side character in my own marriage. I started the car, pulled out of the parking spot, and didn't look back at the apartment. Spoiler alert, I never regretted it. Not even for a second. 20 minutes after I walked out of that apartment, my phone started blowing up like I just won the lottery or announced I was running for president. Except, instead of congratulations, it was Chloe attempting what I can only describe as a hostage negotiation via text message. The first one came through while I was sitting in a Starbucks parking lot trying to process the fact that I just nuked my entire marriage in the span of one morning. My phone buzzed and I looked down to see her name on the screen. Daniel, we can talk about this. I stared at that message for a solid 30 seconds, watching the little dots appear and disappear as she typed, deleted, and retyped whatever was coming next. The dots stopped. Another message came through. Daniel, I'll stop seeing him. I promise. We can work this out. Then another one, barely 10 seconds later. Daniel, this is childish. You're acting like a child throwing a tantrum. I had to laugh at that last one. I was being childish. I was the one acting immature, not the woman who'd spent 3 months playing house with her ex-husband while gaslighting her current husband into thinking he was the problem. The audacity was almost impressive. I took a sip of my overpriced latte and watched the messages continue to roll in, one after another, each one more desperate than the last. We've been together for 3 years. You're gonna throw that away? I love you. Doesn't that mean anything? Mark means nothing to me. It was just closure. I'm done with him now. The thing about damage control is that it only works if the other person actually cares about salvaging what's being damaged. And sitting there in that Starbucks parking lot, watching my phone light up with increasingly frantic messages, I realized I genuinely didn't care anymore. That ship hadn't just sailed, it had left the harbor, crossed the ocean, and was probably halfway to Singapore by now, which felt poetically appropriate. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I opened my email and started looking at the relocation package details Robert's assistant had already sent over. Business class flight to Singapore, $5,000 relocation allowance, temporary corporate housing for the first month while I found my own place, and a signing bonus that was more than I'd made in the last 6 months combined. I was too busy choosing between the business class seats with extra legroom versus the ones closer to the bathrooms to worry about Chloe's sudden crisis of conscience. By evening, the text messages had slowed down, and I figured maybe she'd finally gotten the hint that I wasn't interested in her too little too late apology tour. I checked into a hotel, nothing fancy, just a Holiday Inn Express that offered free breakfast and Wi-Fi that actually worked, and was settling in to watch some mindless TV when my phone buzzed with a notification. Instagram. Chloe had posted a story. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on it. There she was, sitting on what was very clearly Mark's balcony. I recognized it from the photos he'd posted months ago when he first moved back to town. Holding a coffee mug and staring pensively into the distance like she was the star of some indie drama film. The caption read, "When life gives you curveballs, drink coffee." I actually laughed out loud. The woman had literally just lost her marriage because she couldn't stop seeing her ex-husband, and her immediate response was to run to said ex-husband's apartment and post about it on social media? The lack of self-awareness was genuinely breathtaking. But wait, it gets better. Within minutes of her posting that story, my phone lit up with a text from Jessica, one of Chloe's friends who had the loyalty of a hungry raccoon and the subtlety of a car alarm. Jessica and I had never particularly liked each other. She was one of those people who thought being brutally honest was a personality trait instead of just being rude. But she always kept tabs on everyone's drama like it was her job. "Did you really move out?" her text read, and I could practically hear the gossip-hungry excitement in her digital voice. "Not yet," I replied, because technically I was just staying at a hotel. "But I'm packing faster than Amazon Prime, so give it a couple days." I could see the dots bouncing immediately as she typed her response. "Chloe's at Mark's place, just FYI." "Yeah, I saw the Instagram story," I wrote back. "Thanks for the update, though. Real friend of the year material there, Jessica." She sent back a shrugging emoji, which pretty much summed up her entire approach to friendship. I was about to put my phone down and get back to my TV show when another text came through, this time from my buddy Ethan. Ethan was one of those genuinely good friends who'd been with me through thick and thin. And he happened to work at the same gym where Mark was a member. This was about to get interesting. "Dude," his text started, which is never a good sign. "You need to see this." Attached to the message were screenshots from what appeared to be a group chat. Mark's name was at the top, and the messages were from earlier that day. I zoomed in and started reading, and with each line, my blood pressure dropped while my satisfaction level skyrocketed. "Yeah, she's practically single now. Meeting up with her later. Her husband's completely clueless. Dude has no idea what's going on. She said he's being all weird about us hanging out. Like, bro, we're just catching up. Captain Oblivious over there probably thinks we're doing Bible study or something." There it was, in digital black and white. Mark calling me Captain Oblivious, laughing about the situation with his gym buddies, bragging about how he was essentially having an affair with my wife while I played the fool. The thing is, I wasn't even mad. I was vindicated. This was exactly the confirmation I needed that every instinct I'd had over the past 3 months was dead on accurate. "Ethan, you're a legend," I texted back. "Can you send me the full screenshots?" "Already did. Thought you might need them." I saved those screenshots like they were precious artifacts, because honestly, they kinda were. Then I did something that probably wasn't my most mature moment, but it felt absolutely necessary. I opened my text conversation with Chloe, attached the screenshots, and sent them with a single word. Curious? The response was immediate. My phone started ringing within 30 seconds. Chloe's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring. Then she called again. I let that one go to voicemail too. Then came the text messages, rapid fire, like she was trying to set some kind of speed typing record. Where did you get those? Those are out of context. Daniel, answer your phone. This isn't what it looks like. Mark was joking around with his friends. That's how guys talk. You're taking this completely the wrong way. I screenshot her messages too, just for the collection. And then I did something I should have done weeks ago. I muted her notifications. Not blocked, because I figured I'd probably need to communicate with her about divorce logistics eventually, but muted so I could have some actual peace and quiet without my phone having a seizure every 5 minutes. Then I forwarded the screenshots to Jessica with a simple message. Since you seem interested in the drama, here's the full story. Mark's been playing both of us. Thought you should know what kind of person your girl's been spending all her time with. Was it petty? Absolutely. Did it feel amazing? You bet your ass it did. Within an hour, Jessica had apparently shared those screenshots with her entire friend group because I started getting texts from people I barely knew, friends of friends who'd heard about the situation and wanted to share their opinions. Most of them were surprisingly supportive, with messages like, "Dude, you dodged a bullet," and "Chloe's crazy, you're better off." My personal favorite came from Liam, who'd been skeptical about the whole situation from the beginning. His text was simple and perfect. Told you, closure doesn't take 6 weekends and a bottle of wine. Welcome to the other side, brother. First round's on me. I looked at the pile of screenshots on my phone, the evidence of Chloe's emotional affair and Mark's smugness, all neatly documented like a case file. Then I looked at the email from Robert with my Singapore relocation details, the hotel room I was sitting in, and the life I was about to start building without the weight of a failing marriage dragging me down. My phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Chloe. "We need to talk face to face. This is our marriage." I typed back 4 words. Was, past tense, goodbye. Then I opened my laptop, started researching apartments in Singapore, and planned my new life. Behind me, my phone kept buzzing with notifications, but I didn't even look. I was too busy choosing between a downtown apartment with a view of Marina Bay or a slightly cheaper place near the business district. Some decisions are harder than others, but walking away from Chloe, that was turning out to be the easiest decision I'd made in years. The next Saturday rolled around and I'd officially designated it as my packing day, which sounds way more organized than it actually was. Realistically, I was just going back to the apartment to grab the rest of my stuff while Chloe was supposed to be out doing whatever it is that recently separated women do on Saturday mornings. Probably brunch with Mark. Except now that I'd exposed their little situation to half the internet, maybe that particular tradition was on hold. I was hoping for a clean in-and-out operation. Show up, grab my Xbox, my good kitchen knives that I'd brought into the marriage, maybe that vintage record player my dad gave me, and peace out before any drama could unfold. Naturally, the universe had other plans, because when I pulled up to the apartment building, I saw not 1, not 2, but 3 cars parked in visitor spots that I recognized immediately. Chloe's car, her mother Carol's pristine white Lexus that she treated like a firstborn child, and her brother Jason's obnoxiously lifted truck that compensated for pretty much everything you'd expect it to compensate for. My stomach dropped. This wasn't going to be a simple packing day. This was going to be an intervention, and I was the intervenee. I sat in my car for a solid 5 minutes, seriously contemplating just driving away and hiring professional movers to deal with this mess. But then I remembered that my signed first edition of The Great Gatsby was in there, and there was no way I was leaving that behind for Chloe to use as a coaster or whatever. So I took a deep breath, grabbed my empty duffel bags from the trunk, and walked up to the apartment like a man heading to his own execution. Except the executioner was his mother-in-law, and the method was death by judgment. I unlocked the door and walked in to find all three of them sitting in my living room like they were staging some kind of daytime talk show intervention episode. Carol was perched on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap, wearing what I called her serious conversation outfit, a blazer and slacks combo that screamed, "I'm about to tell you how disappointed I am in your life choices." Jason was standing by the window with his arms crossed, trying to look intimidating, which might have worked if he wasn't wearing a tank top that said gym life and hadn't skipped leg day for approximately his entire life. And Chloe was sitting in the armchair, eyes red and puffy, playing the victim role like she was auditioning for an Oscar. "Daniel," Carol started, and oh boy, here we go. She had that tone in her voice, the one that mothers-in-law use when they're about to lecture you about something they know absolutely nothing about. "Honey, Chloe told us everything, and we're very concerned about you. This decision to move abroad, to just abandon your marriage, it's clearly a cry for help. We think you might be having some kind of midlife crisis." I actually had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. A midlife crisis at 32? Because apparently the only logical explanation for a man leaving his wife who was having an emotional affair with her ex-husband was mental instability. "Carol," I said, setting my duffel bags down by the door, "I appreciate your concern, but this isn't a midlife crisis. A midlife crisis is buying a sports car you can't afford or getting a bad tattoo. This is just me accepting a better job with better pay in a better location." "Better location?" Jason interjected, puffing out his chest like a rooster who just learned to talk. "You're abandoning your wife, your family, your entire life here. Real men don't just run away when things get tough." The irony of Jason lecturing me about being a real man when he still lived in his mom's basement at age 28 and had been fired from 3 jobs in the past 2 years for personality conflicts wasn't lost on me. "You're right, Jason," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Real men stay in marriages where their wives spend every weekend with their ex-husbands. That's definitely the alpha male move." Chloe made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. "Daniel, that's not fair. You're making it sound so much worse than it was." Am I, though? I walked further into the apartment, heading toward the bedroom to start packing. Because from where I'm standing, you spent 3 months prioritizing Mark's emotional needs over our marriage. And when I finally called you out on it, you told me maybe we weren't right for each other. So I agreed. That's not me making it worse. That's literally what happened. Carol stood up, following me toward the bedroom like she wasn't going to let this go. "Daniel, every marriage has rough patches. You work through them. You don't just give up and move to another country. What about counseling? What about trying to fix this?" I stopped in the doorway and turned to face her. "Carol, with all due respect, Chloe had 3 months to suggest counseling. 3 months to pump the brakes on her Mark reunion tour. 3 months to choose our marriage. She didn't. So now I'm choosing myself, and that includes accepting a job that pays $145,000 a year, comes with housing, and gives me a fresh start somewhere that doesn't involve weekend brunch drama." "It's about the money then," Jason said from behind me, and I could hear the judgment in his voice. "You're really that shallow?" I turned around slowly, and I could feel my patience wearing thinner than the plot of a reality TV show. "No, Jason, it's not about the money. It's about respect. It's about being in a relationship where I'm actually a priority instead of an afterthought. It's about not feeling like a third wheel in my own marriage. But sure, the $145,000 and the view of the Singapore skyline don't hurt." That's when I pulled out my phone and opened up the screenshots Ethan had sent me. The ones with Mark calling me Captain Oblivious, bragging about how clueless I was, laughing about the situation with his buddies. I pulled them up on my phone and held it out toward Carol. "Here," I said, "since Chloe apparently gave you her version of events, let me show you what was actually happening."
Carol took my phone, her reading glasses already hanging around her neck on one of those beaded chains. She put them on and started reading, her eyes moving back and forth across the screen. I watched her expression change from defensive to confused to shocked to absolutely mortified. Her mouth literally fell open. It was like watching someone's entire worldview collapse in real time. "These are," she started, then stopped, scrolling down to read more. "Mark wrote these? About you? While he was having what was essentially an emotional affair with your daughter?" "Yeah," I said, "that's exactly what was happening. And when I tried to bring it up, I was told I was being insecure and jealous. So excuse me if I'm not super interested in counseling to save a marriage where I was being actively disrespected and mocked behind my back." Chloe jumped up from the armchair, her face going red. "Those are out of context. Mark was just joking around with his friends. That's how guys talk." "That's how guys talk about women they're sleeping with, Chloe," I said flatly. "Not about the husbands of women they're just getting closure with. There's a difference." The room went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop, or in this case, you could hear Jason's jaw hitting the floor.
Carol slowly handed my phone back to me, and when I looked at her face, I could see the gears turning. She was realizing that maybe, just maybe, her precious daughter wasn't the innocent victim in this story. "Daniel," Carol said quietly, and her tone had completely changed. The judgment was gone, replaced with something that sounded almost like understanding. I didn't know it was like this." "Yeah, well, now you do," I said, pocketing my phone. "And just so we're clear, I didn't abandon Chloe. I honored her request. She said if I couldn't handle her relationship with Mark, maybe we weren't right for each other. I simply agreed with her assessment and acted accordingly. That's not abandonment. That's called consent." Jason, who'd been suspiciously quiet during the screenshot revelation, finally spoke up, though his voice had lost all its earlier bravado. But you guys have been together for 3 years. You're just gonna throw that away?" "I'm not throwing anything away," I said, walking past him into the bedroom to start actually packing. "I'm just refusing to be plan B in my own marriage. Chloe chose Mark for 3 months straight. Now I'm choosing Singapore. Fair's fair." I started pulling clothes out of the closet, shoving them into my duffel bag with zero regard for organization. Suits, casual shirts, jeans, everything was getting crammed in because I just wanted to get out of there before this turned into an even bigger circus than it already was. Behind me, I could hear whispered arguing. Chloe trying to explain herself to her mother, Carol asking questions in that low, disappointed tone that mothers are so good at. Jason probably just standing there, trying to figure out what just happened. After about 10 minutes of furious packing and uncomfortable silence broken only by whispered family drama, Carol appeared in the bedroom doorway. "Daniel, I think we should go. I'm sorry we ambushed you like this. If I'd known the full situation—" "It's fine, Carol," I said, and I actually meant it. "You were trying to help your daughter, I get it. But the marriage is over. Chloe made her choice, and I made mine. No amount of intervention is going to change that." She nodded slowly, then reached out and squeezed my shoulder. "For what it's worth, I think she made a terrible mistake, and I'm sorry you were put in this position." "Thanks," I said, genuinely surprised by her support. "That actually means a lot." They left about 5 minutes later, all 3 of them filing out of the apartment like mourners leaving a funeral. Chloe tried to catch my eye as she left, her face streaked with tears, but I just kept packing. I heard the door close, the lock click, and then finally, blessed silence. I walked over to the liquor cabinet, pulled out the bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion, and poured myself a generous glass. Then I raised it in a toast to the empty apartment. "To new beginnings," I said out loud, and to packing being way more fun when your ex-wife's entire family just got hit with a reality check. The whiskey burned going down, but in a good way. I took another sip, set the glass down, and got back to packing. Singapore was waiting, and I had exactly 8 days left before my flight. 8 days until I could close this chapter and start fresh. And honestly, I couldn't wait. The morning of my flight to Singapore felt surreal in the best possible way. I woke up at 4 a.m. in my hotel room, not because my alarm went off, but because I was genuinely too excited to sleep. It's funny how your body works. 3 months of marriage stress had me sleeping like garbage, tossing and turning every night, waking up exhausted. But the night before the biggest life change I'd ever made, I slept like a baby who just discovered naps were optional, and woke up feeling like I'd chugged 3 espressos and won the lottery. I got dressed, double-checked my passport approximately 17 times, like it might spontaneously disappear, and loaded my luggage into my Uber. The driver was this cheerful guy named Ahmed, who immediately noticed my above-average number of suitcases and asked if I was moving. Singapore, I told him, and just saying it out loud made it feel real, starting fresh. Good for you, man, Ahmed said, pulling out of the hotel parking lot. Life's too short to stay somewhere you're not happy. If only he knew how right he was. We made small talk about Singapore. He'd been there once for a wedding and couldn't stop raving about the food. And before I knew it, we were pulling up to the airport. I tipped him extra because his enthusiasm about my fresh start had genuinely made my morning even better. Grabbed my bags and walked into the terminal feeling like the protagonist in one of those inspirational movies where the guy finally gets his life together. After I checked my bags and got through security, I found myself sitting at my gate with about an hour to kill before boarding. That's when I decided to do something that was probably petty but felt absolutely necessary. I pulled out my phone, opened Instagram, and took a selfie right there in the terminal. Nothing fancy, just me with my boarding pass visible, the gate number clear in the background, and a genuine smile on my face. I posted it with the caption, "New chapter begins, Singapore bound." The comments started rolling in within minutes, and it was like watching a live feed of everyone's reactions to my life implosion. Most people had no idea what had happened. I'd kept my marriage drama relatively private until this point, so the responses were a mix of confusion and congratulations. "Wait, what happened?" wrote my college roommate Mike. "Didn't your wife say she'd never let you go?" commented Sarah from my old job. That one made me laugh out loud. "She didn't let me go," I typed back. "That's why I left." Short, simple, and perfectly accurate. Then came the messages from people who'd clearly heard about the situation through the grapevine. The mutual friends, the acquaintances, the people who knew both me and Chloe and had been watching this train wreck unfold from a safe distance. "Bro, good for you. You deserve better," wrote Marcus. Different Marcus. Confusing, I know. "Best decision you ever made. Trust me," said Kelly, who'd gone through her own messy divorce 2 years ago. My personal favorite came from Liam, who just commented with 3 emojis, a plane, a middle finger, and a champagne glass. Subtle? No. Accurate? Absolutely. I was scrolling through the comments, genuinely entertained by the support, when my phone buzzed with a text message. I looked at the name on the screen and felt my good mood dip slightly. Chloe, of course, because apparently even my departure day couldn't be drama-free. "What's your weekend like?" the message read. And I had to admire the audacity. She was really trying to play it casual, like I hadn't just publicly announced my permanent relocation to another continent? Like we were still married and this was just a normal Saturday morning check-in? I thought about ignoring it. I really did. But something about being in that airport, literally about to board a plane that would take me 9,000 miles away from all this nonsense, made me feel bold. So I opened my camera, took another selfie, this time making sure to get the giant Changi Airport Singapore sign clearly visible in the background, and sent it to her with the caption, "No excess, just upgrades." The typing bubbles appeared almost immediately. Disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. I could practically see her on the other end, typing and deleting, trying to figure out what to say to that. Finally, a message came through. "This isn't funny." I typed back quickly, my fingers flying across the screen. Not a joke. Currently at gate C12, boarding in 45 minutes. But hey, you've got plenty of time to grab brunch with Mark now. Silver lining. She tried calling. The phone rang in my hand, her name flashing on the screen along with that photo of us from our honeymoon that I still hadn't bothered to change. I watched it ring once, twice, 3 times, and then I did something that felt incredibly empowering. I declined the call and immediately turned my phone to airplane mode. Done. Finished. The Chloe chapter of my life was officially closed. I leaned back in my uncomfortable airport chair and let out a long breath. Around me, the gate area was filling up with other Singapore-bound passengers, businessmen in suits typing frantically on laptops, families with young kids who were already causing chaos, a group of college students who looked like they were heading out for study abroad. All these people starting their own journeys. And here I was, 32 years old, starting completely over. They called my boarding group about 30 minutes later, and I gathered my carry-on and laptop bag with this weird mix of excitement and relief washing over me. I handed my boarding pass to the gate agent, walked down the jetway, and stepped onto the plane. Business class, window seat, 14A. I'd splurged on the upgrade using some of my signing bonus, because if you're going to fly halfway across the world to escape your failed marriage, you might as well do it in comfort. The flight attendant, a friendly woman named Michelle, greeted me with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Cross. Heading home or heading out?" "Heading out," I said, settling into my seat. Fresh start. "Well, you picked a beautiful city for it," she said. "Can I get you anything before takeoff? Champagne?" "Absolutely," I said, because honestly, champagne at 8 a.m. on a Saturday seemed like exactly the right way to celebrate escaping a toxic marriage. She brought me a glass a few minutes later, and I took a sip, savoring the bubbles and the moment. The plane was still boarding, people shuffling past to their seats, overhead bins slamming shut, the usual pre-flight chaos. But I felt completely at peace. I pulled out my phone, still on airplane mode, and scrolled through the Instagram comments one more time. They were still coming in, even though I couldn't see the new ones with my phone offline. The last comment I saw before I put my phone away was from my buddy Chris. Meanwhile, Mark's probably realizing he won the booby prize. Have fun in Singapore, King. That made me smile. I put my phone in my pocket, took another sip of champagne, and looked out the window at the tarmac. The ground crew was loading luggage, fueling the plane, doing all the pre-flight checks that happen before a massive aircraft hurls itself across an ocean. About 20 minutes later, we started pulling back from the gate. The captain came over the intercom with the standard welcome speech, flight time, altitude, weather in Singapore, and I felt the plane start to move. We taxied toward the runway, the engines getting louder, and then, suddenly, we were accelerating faster and faster until the nose lifted and we were airborne. I watched my city get smaller below me, the buildings and roads and familiar landmarks shrinking into a miniature version of themselves. Somewhere down there was the apartment I'd shared with Chloe, the office where I'd worked for the past 5 years, the coffee shop where I'd had that conversation with Liam about closure not taking 6 weekends. All of it getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely beneath the clouds. There was some turbulence about an hour into the flight, the plane bouncing around a bit, the seatbelt sign dinging back on. The woman across the aisle gripped her armrests and looked genuinely terrified. But honestly, after the past 3 months of emotional turbulence, a little physical turbulence felt like nothing. I just took another sip of my second glass of champagne and thought about how this rough air was still smoother than my marriage had been. Michelle came by to check on everyone, her professional smile still in place despite the bumpy ride. "Doing okay, Mr. Cross?" "Never better," I said, and I meant it. The turbulence smoothed out after about 15 minutes, and the flight settled into that comfortable rhythm of long-haul travel. I reclined my seat, pulled out my laptop, and started researching neighborhoods in Singapore. Clark Quay looked cool, very nightlife-oriented. Tong Baru had this artsy hipster vibe. Marina Bay was expensive, but had those insane views I'd been dreaming about. I bookmarked about a dozen apartment listings, made notes about proximity to my new office, calculated commute times, and generally started planning my new life with the kind of enthusiasm I hadn't felt in years. At some point, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, Michelle was gently touching my shoulder. "Mr. Cross, we're starting our descent into Singapore. You'll want to put your seat upright." I blinked awake, looked out the window, and saw the lights of Singapore sprawled out below us like someone had spilled a box of diamonds across black velvet. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. It was everything I needed. We landed smoothly, taxied to the gate, and I gathered my things with hands that were actually shaking a little from excitement. As I walked off the plane into Changi Airport, the air conditioning hitting me like a welcome committee, I pulled my phone out of airplane mode. Immediately, messages started flooding in. Chloe had tried calling 14 more times. 14. There were texts from her, from Carol, from Jason, from Jessica, from people I barely knew. But I didn't read any of them. Instead, I took one more selfie. Me in the Singapore airport with the iconic butterfly garden visible in the background, and posted it with one word: arrived. Then I muted my phone, grabbed my luggage from baggage claim, and walked out into my new life. No exes, no drama, just me, Singapore, and unlimited possibilities. Singapore was everything I'd hoped for, and then some. Calling it paradise feels cliché, but honestly, that's the only word that fits. My apartment was on the 23rd floor of a sleek, modern building in the Marina Bay area, with floor-to-ceiling glass walls that gave me a view of the city skyline that looked like someone had photoshopped it for being too perfect. Every morning, I'd wake up, make coffee, and stand at those windows watching the sun rise over the city. And I'd think about how just a month ago, I was waking up to Chloe getting dressed for another Mark brunch date. The upgrade was almost comical. Work was incredible, too. The Singapore office was newer, more innovative, and, frankly, just more excited about what they were doing than the folks back home. My team actually wanted to be there, which was a refreshing change from the soul-crushing apathy that had defined my old workplace. Plus, the salary bump meant I could actually afford to enjoy the city. I tried hawker center food that cost $3 and tasted better than $50 restaurant meals back home. Explored gardens by the bay on weekends and generally lived like someone who'd just escaped prison and was seeing colors for the first time. The air quality alone was worth the move. I'm not even joking. The air in Singapore was so clean, it made me feel like my lungs were getting a spa treatment every time I breathed. My soul felt filtered, purified, like I'd run myself through some kind of human British system and come out the other side actually functional. Life was peaceful, work was great. I'd made a few friends, other expats who understood the weird limbo of starting over in a new country. Everything was going almost suspiciously well, which should have been my first clue that the universe was about to deliver some entertainment. It started with Chloe's online meltdown, which I only knew about because my buddy Liam sent me screenshots with a message that just said, "Bro, you gotta see this." I was sitting in a coffee shop near my apartment enjoying an iced latte that cost less than a sneeze when I opened the images he'd sent. Chloe had posted on Facebook, not Instagram where it might get buried, but Facebook where all the aunts and uncles and family friends could see, with a caption that read, "When your husband chooses money over love. Some people show you who they really are when things get hard. Grateful for the people who stuck by me through this difficult time. Broken heart emoji." I had to read it twice because the audacity was genuinely breathtaking. She was really out here playing the victim, painting me as some gold digger who'd abandoned our sacred union for a paycheck, completely ignoring the 3-month Mark Festival that had actually ended our marriage. The post had dozens of comments, and Liam had thoughtfully screenshot those too. But here's where it got good. The comment section was not going the way Chloe had apparently hoped. Instead of a sympathy parade, it was more like a reality check convention. Someone named Jennifer had written, Girl, weren't you having brunch with your ex-husband every weekend? I saw the Instagram stories. Another comment from someone called Mark, money over love? Didn't he ask you to move to Singapore with him and you said no because of Mark? And my personal favorite, from a woman named Patricia, who I vaguely remembered meeting at one of Chloe's family gatherings. He upgraded. Let him live. I actually laughed out loud in the coffee shop, causing several people to look at me like I'd lost my mind. The barista gave me a concerned smile, probably wondering if I was okay. I wanted to show her the screenshots and be like, my ex-wife is getting roasted in her own comments section, but that felt like it might be oversharing with someone who was just trying to make lattes. Liam sent another message. It gets better. Keep scrolling. I scrolled to the next screenshot, and that's when I saw that Karma hadn't just showed up. It had arrived in a limousine, wearing a ball gown and carrying receipts. Someone had tagged Mark's new girlfriend, Sophia, in the comments. Apparently, Sophia and Chloe had mutual friends because Sophia had seen the post and decided to contribute to the conversation. Sophia had written, "Interesting perspective. Mark told me you were obsessed with him and wouldn't leave him alone. Said you were using closure as an excuse to try to rekindle things. That's not true, right?" The comment had been posted 2 hours ago, and there were no replies from Chloe. Radio silence. The kind that speaks volumes. The kind that basically confirms everything without actually confirming anything. But Sophia wasn't done. Oh no, Sophia was just getting started. Liam's next screenshot showed that Sophia had made her own post, a public one, with screenshots of the exact same messages Ethan had sent me. Mark's group chat, where he'd called me Captain Oblivious, bragged about Chloe being practically single. The whole damning conversation laid out in glorious high definition. Sophia's caption was chef's kiss perfect. PSA, if a guy tells you his ex-wife's husband is clueless about their friendship, maybe ask yourself what exactly they're friends about. Consider this a public service announcement. Hashtag weekend therapy fail. Hashtag closure is canceled. The post had already gotten over 200 likes and was being shared like wildfire. People were tagging Chloe. People were tagging Mark. It was a full-blown social media disaster. And I was sitting in a Singapore coffee shop watching it unfold in real time like it was the season finale of my favorite show. I sent Liam a message. "You've made my entire week, possibly my entire month." He replied, "Karma is a beautiful thing, my friend. Also, Mark and Chloe both deleted their social media. They've gone dark." I ordered another iced latte to celebrate. The barista asked if I was celebrating something, and I said, "Poetic justice," which probably confused her, but she smiled anyway and gave me an extra shot of espresso for free. Over the next few days, I heard through the grapevine, mainly Liam and Ethan, who were feeding me updates like I was watching a reality show, that the fallout had been spectacular. Mark had apparently tried to do damage control by posting some generic statement about misunderstandings and taking things out of context, but it was too late. The screenshots were everywhere. His gym buddies had seen them, his coworkers had seen them, his family had definitely seen them. Chloe had gone completely silent online. No posts, no stories, no likes or comments. It was like she'd been digitally raptured. According to Jessica, who had apparently switched sides and was now Team Daniel, loyalty of a raccoon, remember? Chloe was going through a really hard time and couldn't believe people were being so cruel. The lack of self-awareness was almost impressive. She couldn't believe people were being cruel? She'd spent 3 months having an emotional affair, gaslighting me about it, and then tried to play the victim when I left. And now she was shocked that the internet wasn't buying her sob story. Ethan sent me a message one evening. "Dude, Mark showed up at the gym today and everyone was giving him the cold shoulder. Someone literally called him Weekend Mark to his face. He left after 10 minutes. Weekend Mark. The nickname had stuck. I loved everything about that. But the absolute cherry on top of this Karma Sunday came about 2 weeks after Sophia's post went viral.
I was at my apartment working from home for the day when I got a message from an unknown number, Singapore number, which was weird because I hadn't given my new number to many people yet. "Hi Daniel, this is Sophia. I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I got your number from Ethan. I wanted to apologize for my part in all of this mess. I had no idea about the full situation until recently." I stared at that message for a solid minute, trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of elaborate prank. But then more messages came through. "Mark told me you and Chloe were basically separated and just hadn't made it official yet. He said she was the one pursuing him, not the other way around. Obviously, the screenshots show a different story. I feel like an idiot." I typed back, "You're not an idiot. Mark's a professional liar. Trust me, I lived it for 3 months before I finally woke up." Still, she wrote, "I should have asked more questions. Anyway, I broke up with him. Couldn't trust anything he said after seeing those messages. And I thought you should know. He's been telling people that Chloe was crazy and obsessed with him, trying to rewrite history now that he's been exposed."
Of course he was. Because guys like Mark never take responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. Always someone else being crazy or obsessed or unreasonable. "Thanks for letting me know," I replied. "And thanks for posting those screenshots. You have no idea how validating it was to watch karma actually work for once." "Happy to help," she wrote back. "Also, those posts you made from Singapore, your life looks amazing. Good for you for getting out." I smiled at that. It really is. Best decision I ever made. We chatted for a few more minutes. She was actually pretty cool, funny and self-aware in a way that made me wonder what she'd ever seen in Mark in the first place. And then we signed off. I sat there in my Singapore apartment looking out at the skyline as the sun set and the city lights started twinkling on like someone was flipping switches across the entire metropolitan area. Somewhere back home, Chloe and Mark were dealing with the consequences of their actions. Their social media was dark, their reputations were trashed, and they'd become cautionary tales in their own social circles. Meanwhile, I was living in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, making more money than I'd ever made, working a job I actually enjoyed, and watching karma deliver justice so perfectly it could have been scripted. I grabbed my phone and ordered Thai food delivery. Phenomenal pad Thai that would arrive in 20 minutes for less than $10. I pulled up Netflix and settled in for a quiet evening. No drama, no emotional affairs, no weekend Mark festivals. Just me, my apartment with the ridiculous view, and the peaceful satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually win. Life was good, and it was only getting better. Just when I thought the Chloe and Mark show had reached its season finale and I could settle into my peaceful Singapore existence without any more drama, the universe decided to throw me one more plot twist. And let me tell you, this one was a doozy that I absolutely did not see coming, which honestly should have been impossible given how predictable Chloe had become. I'd been in Singapore for about 6 weeks at this point, and I'd fallen into a comfortable routine. Wake up to that incredible skyline view, hit the gym in my building, grab breakfast at the hawker center down the street, head to work, come home, explore the city, or hang out with my new expat friends. It was simple, drama-free, and exactly what I needed. I was literally living my best life, the kind of life that makes people back home scroll through your Instagram and think, "Damn, he really did that." Life was good, and it was only getting better. So, naturally, that's when everything went sideways. I was at work, sitting in a meeting about Q4 projections, when my phone buzzed with a call from my building's security desk. I almost ignored it. I was in a meeting, and whatever the security guard needed could probably wait. But something made me excuse myself and take the call in the hallway. "Mr. Cross," the security guard's voice sounded uncertain, like he was dealing with a situation he hadn't been trained for. "Sir, there's a woman here in the lobby. She says she's your wife, and she's crying quite a bit. She's asking to see you." I stood there in the hallway of my Singapore office building, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I just heard. I'm sorry, what? A woman claiming to be my wife?"
Yes, sir. She has identification, American passport, name is Chloe Cross. My blood ran cold, then hot, then cold again. Chloe was here, in Singapore, at my building. The mental gymnastics required to make that make sense were Olympic level. How did she even find my address? I asked, more to myself than to the security guard. She said she tracked you through a coworker's Instagram post. Sir, should I send her away? Part of me, the petty part that had been enjoying my drama-free existence, wanted to say yes. Tell her customer service is closed, building's full, try again never. But curiosity got the better of me, combined with a morbid need to understand what could possibly possess someone to fly halfway around the world to ambush their ex-husband. Tell her I'll meet her at the coffee shop across the street in 1 hour, I said. Not in my building. The coffee shop? Understood, sir. I hung up and stood there for a minute trying to wrap my head around this development. Chloe had flown to Singapore. That was at minimum a 20-hour journey with layovers, costing probably $2,000 in airfare, all to show up at my building and cry in the lobby? The dedication was almost impressive if it wasn't completely unhinged. I went back into my meeting, made my apologies about a family emergency, which technically wasn't a lie, and left work early. The whole taxi ride back to my neighborhood, I was running through scenarios in my head. What could she possibly want? What could she possibly say that would justify this level of dramatic gesture? An hour later, I walked into the coffee shop across from my building and spotted her immediately. She was sitting at a corner table, wearing a gray hoodie and leggings, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup, looking absolutely exhausted. This wasn't the perfectly put-together Chloe who used to spend an hour getting ready for Mark brunches. This was someone who looked like they'd been through an emotional wood chipper. I ordered a black coffee, needed the caffeine for whatever this conversation was about to be, and walked over to her table. She looked up as I approached, and her eyes were red and puffy from crying. "Daniel," she said, her voice cracking, "thank you for meeting me." "Sienna," I said, sitting down across from her, "you flew to Singapore. I feel like thank you is kind of redundant at this point. What are you doing here?" She took a shaky breath, wrapping her hands around her own coffee cup like it was a life preserver. "I messed up, Daniel. I messed up so badly, and I need you to know that I understand that now. I've had time to think, to really process everything, and I see it clearly now. What I did to you, to us, it was wrong." I took a sip of my coffee and waited. This felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced this speech on the plane. "Mark wasn't worth it," she continued, tears starting to fall again. "None of it was worth losing you. I thought I could have both. I thought I could support him through his divorce while maintaining our marriage, and I didn't realize how much I was hurting you until it was too late." "Which part bothered you most?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Losing me, or getting called out publicly for your emotional affair?" She flinched at that. "That's not fair." "Isn't it, though? Because from where I'm sitting, you had 3 months to care about how this affected me. 3 months to choose our marriage over your ex-husband, and you didn't. So forgive me if I'm skeptical about this sudden revelation that happened to occur right after you got dragged on social media." "I deserve that," she said quietly. "I deserve all of it. But Daniel, I'm here because I love you. I flew across the world because I needed you to see that I'm serious about fixing this, about us." I leaned back in my chair and studied her. She looked genuine, I'll give her that. The tears seemed real, the exhaustion was definitely real, and the desperation in her voice wasn't something you could easily fake. But here's the thing about patterns. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. "Let me ask you something," I said. "Did you think about calling first? Texting? Having an actual conversation before spending $2,000 on a plane ticket to ambush me?" "I knew you wouldn't answer," she admitted. "You stopped responding to my messages weeks ago. This was the only way to make you listen." "Right. So this isn't about respecting my boundaries or my decision. This is about you not accepting no for an answer again, just like you didn't accept my boundaries about Mark." She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. Score 1 for self-awareness, I guess. "Daniel, I'm pregnant," she said suddenly. And the words hung in the air between us like a bomb that hadn't quite detonated yet. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of the statement, combined with the timing, combined with everything else, just made me laugh. "Are you serious right now?" I said, setting my coffee down. "Chloe, we haven't been intimate in over 3 months. The last time was before the Mark Festival even started. Unless your ex-husband's first name is secretly Daniel, I seriously doubt that baby is mine."
Her face went bright red. I mean, she stammered, and I could see her brain working overtime to figure out how to salvage this lie. "I just thought I wanted you to care." "You wanted me to care?" I repeated slowly. "So you lied about being pregnant after flying to Singapore to tell me you've changed, after crying about how much you messed up and how you want to fix things? And your big move was to lie about being pregnant to manipulate me into what exactly? Taking you back?" "I panicked," she said, tears flowing harder now. "I'm sitting here watching you live this amazing life without me, and I'm back home dealing with the fallout of everything. And I wanted you to feel something." I stood up, grabbing my coffee. "I do feel something, Chloe. I feel relieved that I left when I did, because this right here, this is exactly the kind of manipulation I've been living without for 6 weeks, and it's been amazing. Daniel, please." "No," I said firmly. "You flew to Singapore thinking you could what? Cry enough to make me forget 3 months of you choosing Mark over me? Lie about being pregnant to guilt me into reconsidering? That's not love, Chloe. That's desperation. And frankly, it's kind of pathetic." She looked up at me, mascara running down her face despite the fact that she supposedly wasn't wearing makeup. "I thought I could have both," she whispered. "I thought I was strong enough to support him through his divorce while keeping our marriage together. I didn't think you'd actually leave. That's the problem right there," I said. "You didn't think I'd leave. You took me for granted. You assumed I'd always be there playing second fiddle to whatever Mark needed. And when I finally chose myself, you couldn't handle it." I finished the last of my coffee and set the cup down on the table. "I'm going now. You should book a flight home. Singapore is beautiful, but I don't think you're really here for the sightseeing. Daniel, please, can we just talk more? Can you give me another chance?" I looked at her one last time, really looked at her, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no lingering affection, just a complete absence of feeling, like looking at a stranger who happened to know my name. I gave you chances, Chloe. Every weekend you chose Mark, I gave you a chance to choose differently. Every time I brought up how uncomfortable I was, that was a chance. Every conversation about Singapore that you shut down, that was a chance. You had dozens of chances, and you chose wrong every single time. So no, you don't get another one. I walked out of that coffee shop without looking back, crossed the street to my building, and rode the elevator up to my apartment. When I got inside, I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the Singapore skyline and took a deep breath. My phone buzzed, a text from Chloe. "I'm sorry for everything." I looked at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. Some apologies are too little, too late, and some bridges are meant to stay burned. I ordered Thai food, pulled up Netflix, and settled into my couch. Tomorrow, I'd probably hear through the grapevine that Chloe had flown home. Maybe she'd post something cryptic on social media about lessons learned and growth, or whatever people post when they've made a series of terrible decisions and want to seem philosophical about it. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, I was just going to enjoy my pad thai, my incredible view, and my drama-free existence. Some people never learn, but at least I had. 2 weeks after Chloe's surprise Singapore visit, she posted pictures with her yoga instructor, Ryan, captioned, "The universe heals what's broken." I had to hand it to her. The woman could move on faster than a Ferrari in a school zone. Apparently, the universe healed her broken heart by providing another emotionally available man with flexible hours and presumably impressive downward dog form. The irony? Ryan was still emotionally close to his ex-girlfriend. Shocker, right? Chloe walked in on them mid-deep stretching session, which I'm pretty sure isn't an actual yoga term, but definitely sounds like a euphemism for something that requires significantly less flexibility than she was hoping for. Liam sent me the screenshots of her vague posting about trust issues and patterns repeating. I genuinely laughed out loud. But fate wasn't done serving up comedy gold. Mark got transferred to Singapore, and his company put him in my building. The same building. When he showed up in the lobby with a new girlfriend half his age, looking all surprised, I just smiled. "Bro, small world," he said, trying to play it cool. "Yeah," I replied. "Some of us just keep shrinking it." Months later, Chloe messaged, "I finally understand how you felt. I'm sorry." I left her on read. Then karma went professional. Turns out her stay-at-mom's tax dodge caught up. 3 years of back taxes, penalties, and interest, roughly $22,000. Sophia, who worked in state revenue, accidentally reported her. Oops. I got promoted, extended my Singapore contract, and started dating Claire, a brilliant architect from Sydney who thinks poetry club is code for nonsense. She's right. When Chloe's final post said, "Sometimes love means letting go," I commented from my burner account, "Exactly. That's why I let go first." Next stop, Bali getaway with Claire. No exes, no drama, just sunshine and silence. Mark still couldn't find closure, even in Singapore. His girlfriend dumped him in our building's group chat after seeing Sophia's viral post. Everyone calls him Weekend Mark now. Elevator rides are entertaining. If Chloe ever reads this, your ex-husband and I are doing fine. He's still searching for emotional healing. I found mine at 30,000 feet, flying away from you.